Welcome everyone to Internal Audit Skills Training Without Travel, presented jointly by AuditNet and Woodington Training. This webinar is part of the AuditNet Training Without Travel series. The subject of today's webinar is Assertiveness Skills for Auditors. I'm Jim Kaplan, founder and owner of AuditNet, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. Joining us is Bill Woodington, principal of Woodington Training Solutions, who will cover, as I said, Assertiveness Skills for Auditors. Let me have Bill introduce himself and give you a brief background of his accomplishments and his career, and then I will cover the housekeeping items for the webinar. There is a slide there for myself and for AuditNet, and I won't take time going over that. You can look at that. If you paid for today's webinar, you should have the handouts, and you'll be able to review that. Bill, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome again to our Training Without Travel series for audit skills. Again, my name is Bill Woodington, and I worked for Wells Fargo for 22 years in the audit group, the last 18 as head of learning and development for the audit and security team at Wells Fargo. Left the company at the end of March to start my own business. I teach internal auditing and professional development seminars, and we'll have our contact information at the conclusion of our webinar today. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Bill. Well, let me go over the housekeeping items for today. This webinar and its material are the property of AuditNet and its webinar partners. Unauthorized usage or recording of the webinar or any of its material is strictly forbidden. We will be recording the webinar, and if you paid the registration fee, you will be provided access to that recording within 2 business days after the webinar. Downloading or otherwise duplicating the webinar recording is expressly prohibited. We kindly request that everyone fill out the brief online evaluation questions that you'll see at the conclusion of the webinar. Your feedback is very valuable, so please take a minute or two to complete the survey. In addition, because this webinar qualifies for CPE credits, we will be putting up polling questions in compliance with NASBA rules. Those answering the questions will receive their CPE certificate by email within 7 to 10 business days. That is if you have paid for today's webinar. If you have not paid for today's webinar but you want to receive CPE, please answer the polling questions, and you can always pay after the fact and we will provide you with a CPE certificate. You have an opportunity both during and at the end of the webinar to ask questions. Submit your questions during the presentation via the chat window at the lower right-hand box on your screen. Type your question and press return to send it. Any question we're unable to answer by the end of the webinar will be answered via email directly within 48 hours. As moderator, I will be launching the polls, showing the results, and monitoring any questions. If GoToWebinar stops working at any time, you may need to close it and restart, or you can always dial in and listen and follow along. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor back to Bill and proceed with Assertiveness Skills for Auditors. Bill?
Yeah, you know, probably you might have thought kind of an unusual topic for our audit skills Training Without Travel webinar that we're having in the last month or so. And just want to welcome all of you. Some of you are return visitors, I assume, and today we've got some new people as well. This is a soft skill topic, obviously, and this is a topic out of my new auditor training class. Now, why a soft skill topic? I mean, in our previous webinars, we've covered risk, we've covered internal auditing basics. Last Friday, we covered field work, pretty much basic audit skills type training, but soft skill training? Why would we ever have soft skill training in our webinar series? Well, I want you to just reflect on this and, you know, be totally honest with yourself here for just a minute. If you ever thought of people you ever worked for or worked with, and you thought of people that you really thought, boy, there's somebody I'd really like to continue working for, I'd love to work for again or work with again, and then you think of individuals where I hope I never work with this individual again, or, you know, never work for this individual again. If you think of the different types of people, again, you worked with, and maybe let's talk about the people that you would not want to work with again. If they were deficient in one thing overall, was it their technical skills or their people skills? And you don't need to respond on this, but I want you to be honest with yourself for a second, because when I teach this segment in my new auditor training class, and I actually have people raise their hands here, overwhelmingly the hands go up for people skills. And yet most of the audit training today, I think if you go to audit seminars or audit conferences, it's all basic audit skills or technical skills or advanced audit skills, not a whole lot allocated to people skills. You know, I think, though, there is an awareness that we need people skills in internal auditing to be successful, and not just in internal auditing, in any job. I'm sure you would agree with that. You know, a while ago, Joel Kramer from the MIS Training Institute called me up. He said, Bill, could you come and do a topic at our Super Strategies conference? And I said, sure, Joel, thanks for asking. Do I get to pick the topic? He said, absolutely. I mean, he wanted an audit topic. And I said, how about if I do assertiveness skills for auditors? And I don't think Joel even responded on the other end. I think he was shocked. He just sat there on the other end of the phone. There was no response. I was like, Joel, are you still there? And he was like, yeah, I'm still there. He goes, Bill, you know, I thought we were going to do an audit topic. I said, I know, Joel, but be honest, you know, you've probably got a lot of audit topics already. Are you sure? I mean, you said I could pick the topic. I really would like to pick this topic out of my new auditor class. And he kind of reluctantly said, okay, if that's what you want to do. But I kind of felt like that was it for me. He would never invite me back. So I went to a Super Strategies conference. I probably only brought like 20 handouts of the materials that you're going to see today. And I walked into the room. There must have been 100 people there. I mean, and they don't know me. It's nothing about me. But I think there's an awareness that they'd been through a lot of audit skills training. They had attended other sessions and seminars already related to auditing. Now, what about this people skills topic? This is a skill. I'm going to argue that today, a skill that we can learn. And I think I've said this in the other webinars. Every time I teach a training segment, I always think about you. What will you take with you after today? What would I want if I were in your shoes? Is there something here today that could help you not only in your professional lives, but your personal lives as well? Well, I'd certainly like your feedback after the webinar today. Again, you'll have my contact and Jim's contact at the end of the webinar today. But if nothing else today, I hope to raise your awareness around assertiveness skills. And what is assertiveness? And what are these skills I'm talking about today? Could they help you in both aspects of your life, professional and personal? Like when someone criticizes you, how do you respond? Is there a right way and a wrong way to respond to criticism? And we'll actually talk about that today. You know, auditors, we hear this a lot. You don't understand our business. We're always training the auditors. And how do most auditors respond to that? Oh, we understand your business. You don't train us. No. No, there's a right way and a wrong way to behave assertively. And that's kind of what I want you to start thinking about before we even get into the topic today. Today's topic, I will share with you some basic assertiveness skills from the book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, authored by Dr. Manuel J. Pete Smith. And if we have some time today, I may show you a short little video clip where you can actually meet Dr. Smith. But again, tools for your toolbox, all right? Things that you can use hopefully not only in your professional lives, but your personal lives as well. Now again, just reflecting, you don't have to respond here, but I want you to just think about this for a minute. When you hear the word assertive, I mean, when you think of people who are assertive, what comes to mind? You know, I ask this question when I teach this in the live classroom, and people raise their hand like cocky, aggressive, annoying, as well as positive and confident. I mean, people mistake assertiveness with aggressive behavior, and they mistake assertive behavior with non-assertive behavior. In today's webinar, we're going to contrast the three behavior styles: assertive behavior, non-assertive behavior, and aggressive behavior. But certainly our focus today will be on assertive behavior. And I also want to say this today. I'm not trying to change your natural style. I'm not trying to change your values. In fact, hopefully, The skills that you will learn today will help you hold to your values. Everything I'm going to present to you today is you being you. You being you, your own natural style. How would you behave when someone criticizes you? How do you hold to your position when maybe it's not a real popular position to be in? Okay, this is in your own natural style. Well, here's our learning objectives today, and you know this, every time you go through training, you should always see learning objectives. Our focus today is on assertive skills. Again, we'll look at the 3 different behavioral styles, and hopefully, again, main goal today is you walk out of here with some tools for your toolbox, something you can use that would be helpful, that'll make you even a more effective auditor and help you in your personal lives as well. Well, first of all, let's talk about kind of the definition of assertive behavior. Assertive behavior includes being direct, honest, respectful while interacting with others. Behaving assertively allows you to express your needs, thoughts, and feelings openly and honestly without violating the rights of others. I mean, again, I'm trying to get you to reflect here. I keep saying be honest. Think about this for a second. But you reflect back on your own lives, and I've done this. Every time I teach this, I think of certain instances in my life where I didn't really behave the way I wanted to behave. I didn't behave assertively in certain situations. I mean, I know this is a simplistic example, but this actually just popped in my head. I'm just going to share this with you. You know, when I was in high school now, I had something happen to me that, you know, it kind of stuck with me over the years. It was the week of the high school dance, and it was the dance where the girls got to ask the guys to the dance. The Sadie Hawkins dance, but I live in Minnesota, and I grew up in Wisconsin, and we called it the snowball dance. You know, got to be a little creative when you're in high school. But I'll just be honest with you, I didn't want to go to the dance. And so I kind of tried to avoid any girls that week. I didn't want to be asked to the dance. And why? I don't know. I was shy back then. I just wasn't a good dancer. I just didn't want to go. Well, anyway, I'm at my locker, and here comes Tina. And you know how it was in high school when you're trying to open your locker, you spin in your combination. You can't get the locker to open unless the combination is exact. And I'm trying to lift the handle, but it won't open. Now I've got to redo the combo again. Well, now Tina's there. Bill. Hi, Tina. Yeah, I was wondering, would you like to go to the dance on Friday? No, I can't. My parents and I, we're going out of town this weekend. Okay, thanks. Whew. I mean, total lie. We're not going anywhere. But I just didn't want to go, and I couldn't really be honest with her. I didn't think. You know, about an hour after that, a good friend of mine came up to me and said, hey, Bill, I heard Tina asked you to the dance. And I said, yeah, you know, but I turned her down. He goes, yeah, I heard. She already asked Bob. She's going with Bob now. What? Yeah, I mean, you turned her down. Now she's going with Bob. Well, it kind of hit me. I kind of liked Tina. I mean, I kind of wish, I wasn't quite sure what I had just done. Why did I say no? I actually liked her. And I thought, what has Bob got? Why is she going with Bob? Anyway, later that day I had Tina in my math class, and so I wanted to make it up to her. I thought, what if she sees me around this weekend? We're not really going out of town, and she's a friend of mine. I don't want to hurt our relationship. I still want to be friends. So I said to her, she was in the desk right next to me in my math class, and I said, you know, Tina, I heard, you know, I'm sorry it didn't work out going to the dance this weekend, but, and here's another lie, I talked to my mom at lunch today, and it turns out we're not going out of town. And, you know, I just want to know, I heard you ask Bob, and I'm just happy you have a date. She goes, I don't have a date. I didn't ask Bob. And this guy who had told me she had asked Bob, this friend of mine, was also in the math class, sitting right behind me in his desk, and he's falling out of his chair, rolling on the floor, laughing. He made the whole thing up. And I had to go. I mean, I had to tell Tina, oh, well, yeah, I guess we can go. And, you know, I remember we had a great time. It was fun. Why couldn't I have just said initially, Tina, thanks for asking. I'd love to go to the dance. But no, I lie. I avoid her. and I behave in a non-assertive manner. And some might even argue in an aggressive manner. You know, as we get into this today, I just want you to start thinking about this. Have there been situations in your life, and I'm sure we can all identify with this, where we really didn't behave the way we should have, or the way we would want to have behaved? And is there a right way and a wrong way in certain situations to behave? What is assertive behavior? And now you see that question at the bottom of the slide. Why in the world would this behavior be important to auditors? My example earlier, do auditors ever face criticism? Do auditors ever have to hold to their position? A position that may not be overly popular with our business partners? Well, let's talk about this. As I said, we're going to look at 3 behavioral styles today. Again, some people confuse assertive behavior with aggressive behavior and maybe even non-assertive behavior, so let's look at the 3 first. And then, obviously, we'll spend most of the time today on assertive behavior. Non-assertive behavior, passive, indirect, communicates typically a message of inferiority. Okay? And I'll give you a little example here in a minute. Aggressive behavior, more complex, can be active, passive. I mean, you know people that do things behind your back. Aggression can be direct or indirect, honest or dishonest, but always communicates an impression of superiority and disrespect. And finally, assertive behavior, being active, direct, and honest. It communicates an impression of self-respect, respect for others. And again, this is all in your own natural style. You're not trying to be somebody you're not here. This is you being you. Give you an example. You come up to me today and you say, hey, Bill, I got 2 tickets to, I'm going to make up a concert here, the Aerosmith concert. Okay, is Aerosmith still performing? I don't know. Anyway, you say, I've got 2 tickets to the Aerosmith concert. If I say now, I kind of look down, I look away, in a timid voice say, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I can go. I'm just not sure if I can do that. What kind of behavior would that be? Non-assertive. And by the way, in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about how tone of voice and body language plays a huge role in how your message is perceived, whether it be assertive, aggressive, or non-assertive. Let's talk about aggressive behavior. You say I got 2 tickets to the concert, and I say, Aerosmith? What kind of idiot likes a band like that? Aggressive. And if you say, Bill, I've got 2 tickets to this concert, would you like to go? And I say, you know, thanks for asking, but I really don't like that type of music. Assertive behavior. Non-assertive, aggressive, and assertive behavior, and tone of voice and body language can play a huge role. Again, and I won't go through all of these today, but depending on how I would say these and my body language could affect how it's perceived by you as either assertive, non-assertive, or aggressive behavior. I mean, the first one is probably aggressive. Again, only an idiot would think of a solution like that. Don't you ever think before you talk? Aggressive. In bullet 2 now, though, I'm looking away, I'm looking down, soft voice, you know, maybe we might want to think about a different solution. I don't know, what do you think? Non-assertive. But if I said that totally different and used a different body language, like, you know, maybe we might want to think about a different alternative, looking him straight in the eye. What do you recommend? What do you think? Assertive. Same statement, tone of voice, body language can play a huge role in how your message is perceived. Well, as long as we're talking about behaviors today, I had to get this in, a little psychology 101, if you would, for just a minute. The ABCs of behavior. And I just want you to think about this because, again, we'll use this to talk more about what is assertive behavior, how do we behave assertively in certain situations. A is the activating event, B is your belief about that event, C is your consequences and feelings, and D is your ultimate do or your behavior. I mean, let me give you an example here. I'm driving home from work and somebody cuts me off in traffic. There's the activating event. Now, if my belief about that activating event is, boy, he's taking advantage of me, and people are always taking advantage of me, what do you think my consequence and feelings is going to be? Angry, anxious. My ultimate behavior might be to step on that gas pedal and try to cut him off. Always remember this. I think one of the big mistakes, and this is just me now, I think a big mistake many people make in their life is they try to change the activating events in their life, which is very difficult. I really can't change the fact somebody cut me off in traffic. The thing I'd like you to put, if you've got the handouts today, and again, after the webinar today, you can always pay the fee and get all the handouts for our webinar today. I'd like you to put a star by the B. Challenge your belief about the activating event, and I'd like you to write this down. Is it true? Is it true? There's so many things in our lives that we tell ourselves that just aren't true. This guy taking advantage of me? He doesn't know me. How can he be taking advantage of me? You know, I remember years ago when my kids were little, they would come to me with things like an activating event saying, Dad, I'm not going to school today. Why not, John? Well, it's Friday the 13th, and something bad's going to happen. John, you're attaching meaning to meaningless things. What, Dad? All I said was you're attaching meaning to meaningless things. It's our belief about so many things in our lives that quite possibly may not be true. I mean, let me give you another example. Why is it that getting on an airplane and flying is a huge joy to many people and a source of huge grief to many others? I mean, I have a brother-in-law that if he could live on an airplane, he would. He loves it. And I had a person that used to work for me when I worked at U.S. Bank that came to me one day and said, Bill, I can't go out of town next week on this project that we're going out of town for. I was like, well, why can't you go? She goes, I won't get on a plane. I'm like, what? She said, I want you to understand, I won't get on an airplane. Why not? It's going to crash. I know it. And I was like, wait a minute, you know, and I could go through the statistics with her and say, you're probably safer in that airplane than driving home from work tonight. What are we telling ourselves about the activating events in our life? I don't know about you, but sometimes we're at that D stage way before we want to be, right? We're stepping on that gas pedal before we know what even hits us. This ABCD sequence comes really quickly. Always remember, you can go back to your belief and at least challenge that belief. Is it true? If we're not behaving the way we want to behave, challenge your belief about the activating event. Try not to attach meaning to meaningless things. A little psychology 101, and believe me, I'm as guilty as anyone. I got to keep telling myself that over and over again on certain things that happen in my life. Well, as I said, tone of voice, body language, and words can play a huge role in how your message is perceived. Now, I didn't put the percentages up here because I think it's more effective if you write this down. Again, if you've got the handouts today, you can fill in the blanks here. These percentages by column, obviously, need to add up to 100%. When you're speaking to someone in person, face-to-face, how important is body language and how your message is perceived? I mean, what percentage do you think body language plays in how your message is perceived? Well, statistics say 55%, 55% of your message perception perceived by others is related to body language. I'll give you an example here in a minute. Tone of voice is 38%, and words are only 7%. Words aren't real important in how your message is perceived. Now, you could argue that, okay? But let me give you an example here and see if I can convince you of this a little bit further. Well, let's say I'm a teller. I work in a teller line, and it's Friday. It's 4:59 p.m., and I get off at 5 o'clock, and I got a big party tonight. I want to get out of here. I got some exciting things I want to do tonight. You come to my teller window with a complex transaction, and I do this. I look at my watch, and I look at you and say, can I help you? Now, I use the right words. Can I help you? I even tried to use a friendly tone of voice. But studies show the fact I looked at my watch is always going to weigh here, is always going to win out. And basically give the message to the person I'm talking to, I don't have time for you. I don't have time to help you. I got to be going here. I got to go. When you deal with someone in person, 55% body language, 38% tone of voice, 7% words, in order of importance of how your message is perceived, the weight, the importance of how your message is interpreted. Now, how about over the phone, the next column? Well, statistics say 0 for body language, and you could argue that. I mean, I'm sure people that do a lot of telemarketing are told to sit up straight and look in a mirror, things like that, but overall, not much weight to body language when you talk to someone over the phone. Tone of voice is 87%. 87% of message perception when you're talking to someone over the phone is related to tone of voice, and words are only 13%. I mean, you know this. You get a call at the dinner hour, it seems like we get this, from a solicitor. And when you first pick up the phone, they sound like your long-lost friend from high school. Bill, hi. Yeah, we got this vacuum cleaner we want to sell you, and oh, click. They're taught that. Tone of voice is huge. They're excited about their product. They want you to share in that excitement. Tone of voice, extremely important when you're talking to someone over the phone. Okay, Jim, let's do our first polling question today. When talking to someone in person, which of the following plays the most important role in how your message is perceived?
So the choices are words, tone of voice, body language, or eye contact. And we've got about 80% that have voted. We'll leave the poll open for approximately 1 minute in total, so we've got about another 30 seconds. Unless, of course, everybody votes, and then we'll close the poll. Getting very close. Please register your vote. And we will go ahead and close our poll now. Share the results. And the majority said 85% said body language.
Excellent. Give yourself a pat on the back. And now here's our next polling question. When talking to someone over the phone, which of the following plays the most important role in how your message is perceived?
Again, the choices are words, tone of voice, body language, or eye contact. This is going very quickly. Almost everyone has voted. It's only 20 seconds in. So register your vote. Most of you have voted, so we're going to go ahead and we will close our poll in about 10 seconds. And we will close the poll now and share the results. And it looks like everybody said tone of voice. Somebody's paying attention, huh, Bill?
Sounds great.
Okay. Go ahead and hide those results and let you get back to the presentation.
Well, let me give you some examples now, as long as we're going to contrast non-assertive, aggressive, and assertive behavior. As we just talked about, body language and tone of voice play a huge role. But let me give you some examples from a recent study. And let's first look at people who behave non-assertively. What are some examples of posture, gestures, facial expressions, and voice for people behaving non-assertively. And again, if you have the handouts today, I'd like you to write this down. I think you'll find this interesting. Maybe share with your significant other after our webinar today. People who behave non-assertively for posture typically slouch, is listed here, sifting from one foot to the next. I don't know if you've ever seen speakers who maybe appear kind of non-assertive and they're kind of rocking back and forth on their feet. Hands behind their back is actually listed as a non-assertive posture. And again, just withdrawing or standing back from an individual. And we'll talk about personal space in just a little bit here. What is appropriate personal space? Gestures for people behaving non-assertively, nodding your head constantly. Sure, I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you, but it can drive you kind of nuts. Fidgeting, lack of eye contact is listed for gestures here. Facial expressions, yawning, worried look. And for voice, soft, timid, monotone. People that do a lot of ums and ahs or stutter. Nervous giggling is listed for voice here. All of this examples of non-assertive behavior. Now, what about aggressive behavior? Again, we're looking at the ones we don't want first, and then we'll go to assertive behavior. People who behave aggressively, what are examples of posture? Well, hands on hips, folded arms. And I don't know if you agree with, here's one that might kind of strike you as unusual. Have you ever had someone walk into your office and you just keep working, like you keep typing on your keyboard, on your laptop, or your computer? That's listed as aggressive behavior. Basically, you're not acknowledging them. You're not giving them the time of day. You're telling them, my work is more important, my time is more important, what I'm doing is more important than whatever you have to share. Gestures for people behaving aggressively, putting your arm around someone. Putting your feet up on the table and your hands behind your head, like you own the world. If you wear glasses, looking over your glasses. Are you kidding me? Pointing at people, rolling your eyes, people that stand in your personal space. And again, we'll talk a little more about space here in a minute. Facial expressions for people behaving aggressively, staring, smirking, scowling, stern looks, all listed as aggressive behavior. And voice, loud voice, deep, non-stop talking is listed here. I don't know if you've ever thought of that as aggressive behavior. I was on a flight once from Minneapolis to San Francisco, and I think I was in the middle seat, and two people talked nonstop for 4 hours. My son goes to this high school. Oh, my daughter goes to that high school. Oh, my daughter's in this. My son's in that. Okay. Nonstop talking is listed as aggressive behavior. Again, this is what we don't want. Now let's look at some examples of posture, gestures, facial expressions, and voice for assertive behavior. Open body language for posture. You don't have your hands folded. Your hands are not on your hips or behind your back. And average and maintaining appropriate personal space here. Now, you might argue this. In the United States, the average distance for two people, if they're in person talking to each other, if they're maintaining appropriate personal space, is 27 inches, a little bit over 2 feet. How they came up with this, I mean, did they go and measure people? I don't know. But if you've ever had someone step in your space, it can be pretty annoying and uncomfortable. That's the aggressive again, if someone is in your space, right? And I was on an elevator the other day, and everybody, it was a crammed elevator, and everybody's facing forward. Someone jumped on at the last minute and faced us. They're in my space. Turn around. Gestures for people behaving assertively. Hands under chin, resting elbows on table. Hands under your chin, resting your elbows on table is listed as assertive behavior. And I think that's just showing you're attentive to someone here. A firm handshake is listed here for gestures. Facial expressions, smiling appropriately, appropriate or relaxed eye contact. And for voice, friendly. And get this, proper inflections of your voice. Have you ever had someone who just has a monotone voice? They don't inflect their voice when they talk? Assertive behavior, people know how to inflect their voice. More on assertiveness skills. Well, this is what I alluded to earlier from the book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. Okay? Broken record, fogging, negative assertion, negative inquiry, free information, self-disclosure, and workable compromise. Now, I'm going to show you a little video clip here, and Jim, if this doesn't work, just stop me. We don't have to do this today. I'll be going through all of these skills in just a minute briefly with you, but I thought you might kind of enjoy this as much as anything and actually meet the author of the book and see what he says about this book titled When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. So I'm going to turn up the volume here on my laptop. I'm just going to show you a brief segment of this video. Now they're going to cover broken record, fogging, negative assertion, negative inquiry. And by the way, you notice bullets 2 through 4 here are called the coping skills. Coping with what? Coping with criticism. Okay? Broken record will be the first skill you see. And then we'll look at the coping with criticism skills, fogging, negative assertion, and negative inquiry. And then we'll come back to the PowerPoint here.
And I think you'll answer it yourself. Before we move on, let's have two of you try a brief exercise in broken record. Jane, you be a customer who's returning a faulty toaster she bought. And Bill, you're the hardware store salesperson who sold it to her.
Remember, Bill, make her feel anxious or guilty or any of the slimy, manipulative ploy you can come up with. Okay.
Remember me? I bought this toaster from you last weekend. It doesn't work, so I'd like a replacement.
Oh, well, I think you should take it back to the manufacturer. Their name is on the warranty.
I know the manufacturer's name is there. I want a replacement from you.
Well, you've had this toaster for 3 days. Maybe you used it in the wrong way, or maybe you dropped it.
It doesn't work. I want a replacement.
Well, maybe someone tampered with it?
I'd like one that works. The same model as this one.
You mean the toast doesn't pop up, or maybe it gets too brown?
I'd like a new toaster, please. That one doesn't work.
Did you know that this toaster comes from our most reliable manufacturer?
I understand. It doesn't work. I'd like a replacement.
Well, hey, Joe, get this lady a new toaster. Skill number 1, broken record. Remain focused on your goal without giving up or losing your cool. Good job, Jane.
Skills 2, 3, and 4, the coping skills that teach you how to deal with criticism. How many of you have never been sensitive to criticism? Aside from Pete, if any of you had said yes, I would have been very suspicious. Unfortunately, for most of us, criticism triggers anxiety. And it triggers the trained seal act, too. You criticize me, I get defensive and criticize you, and the whole cycle goes on until someone storms off in a big huff.
The first of the coping skills is fogging. In fogging, you calmly acknowledge the criticism while agreeing there may just be some truth in it.
This allows you to receive the criticism comfortably and objectively while still remaining the judge of your own actions.
And it denies manipulators what they want most, getting a rise out of you. Now, Zatley will end it with a fast and dirty double dose of criticism, if you please.
Okay. Pete, I can't see your eyes through those glasses, and I find your accent annoying.
Well, my glasses are a bit thick, and some people certainly don't like my accent. Now, fogging is great to fend off manipulative criticism. It works equally well for constant naggers and for those one-liners that nitpickers toss your way.
Repeat, you don't deny the criticism, you don't get defensive, and you don't counterattack.
You become sort of like a fog bank. You offer no resistance if something is thrown at you. You're simply unaffected. And it's no fun to throw things at you after a while.
Watch.
Mrs. Palmer is threatening to discharge herself because no one gave her medication last night. Can't you nurses follow a simple order? I prescribed it. It's right on her chart.
The prescription was for 3 days, Dr. Knotts. Yesterday was the 4th day.
Oh, all you nurses are the same. You never remind doctors of what they should do.
Perhaps we should have reminded you.
You're supposed to help us, not create problems.
It must seem like we aren't very helpful sometimes.
I hate having my patients complain. You're experienced nurses. You should have fixed it.
Perhaps we should have.
Don't let it happen again.
What did she really want to tell him? Drop dead. Right, but it would have bought her a shouting match and a headache. Instead, she kept her cool and saved her self-respect and a lot of wasted time. She probably also saved the professional relationship. The doctor obviously wasn't having a good day.
The practice of fogging does a lot of good things for you. It allows you to acknowledge criticism comfortably, but still be a judge of what you do or don't do about it.
It also teaches you to be a good listener, to listen to what's actually said instead of reading minds. Often a lot of our anxiety comes to what we read into a criticism as a result of our own insecurities. Who knows? If you listen instead of getting uptight, the criticism may even be helpful.
Well, what if you don't agree with what someone says? It seems kind of spineless to just agree with it.
Well, we're not suggesting you confess to a murder you didn't commit. Fogging is for judgment calls, opinions. We're just giving you a tool to handle arbitrary criticism.
Jim and Marcia, try fogging. Jim, you be the fogger, and Marcia, you be his coworker who thinks his attitude is terrible. Really lay into him now with the criticism. Jim, your attitude at work lately has been really terrible.
Well, you could be right.
You're such a show-off. Everyone is annoyed by your kidding around.
Well, perhaps I should be more serious.
And the way you dress sometimes, so unprofessional.
Perhaps I should dress more professionally.
You're lazy, too. Everyone is tired of covering up for you.
Well, perhaps I should be more on the...
Let me interrupt for a second. You know, you could be doing this much better. You're not getting it at all.
Oh, wait, I thought... Hey, you may be right, Dr. Smith. I could do this better.
You are right.
But what if the criticism is for a mistake you made, and let's say the criticism is 100% bona fide, you really goofed? I mean, it's only natural that you're going to feel guilty.
Yes, but you don't have to beat yourself over the head with it, which brings up the next coping skill, negative assertion.
Negative assertion, a skill that teaches acceptance of your errors and faults without feeling guilty about them, and without apologizing.
Most of us grew up believing we should feel rotten about ourselves if we made a mistake or did something wrong. This verbal skill teaches acceptance of your errors and faults by strongly and sympathetically agreeing with the criticism about you. Pete, we lost the Potter account because you procrastinated in getting our new cost schedules to Potter.
Boy, did I. That was really a stupid mistake I made.
Yeah. Saying that doesn't bring back the Potter account. It would have been much better if Pete hadn't made the mistake in the first place. But once made, Pete had two choices: to feel terribly guilty and thus be ineffective on the job for the next week, or to accept the error, learn from it, and spend the next week constructively.
Negative assertion allows you to look more comfortably at any negatives in your behavior or personality without resorting to denying the truth or becoming defensive or anxious.
At the same time, it reduces your critic's anger or hostility. Watch. Say, that report you gave me was not only late, it was a total mess. You're right, Linda. It was not my best work. I really, really goofed. Well, it wasn't that bad.
Summary. Assertively admit your mistakes and get on with your life. People get more upset when you try to avoid responsibility for a mistake than they do with the mistake itself.
The last of the coping skills, negative inquiry.
To totally understand this skill, remember that what we're after is open, honest, non-manipulative communication. The key word in this skill is inquiry, the active prompting of criticism in order to use the information if helpful, or to exhaust it if it's manipulative.
In negative assertion, you simply admit your mistakes when criticism is pretty cut and dried. Here, you use inquiry to find out just what is really bugging the person about you and to uncover any hidden agendas or motives that are causing the person to critically manipulate you.
As in fogging, you don't deny the criticism or become defensive or counterattack. Instead, you break the manipulative cycle by actively prompting more information about your wrongdoing. You're going fishing this weekend. It's really a bad idea.
What makes you think my going fishing is so bad?
That is not negative inquiry. Why not?
He became defensive. He counterattacked.
Right. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean you're prompting further criticism. He was really pointing his finger at Linda and saying, "Who are you to tell me not to go fishing?" Now, this is negative inquiry.
You're going fishing this weekend is really a bad idea.
What is it about my going fishing that's bad?
It always tires you out, and you'll get a headache.
I don't understand. What is it about my getting tired and getting a headache that's so bad?
Well, besides that, you'll get smelly.
Honey, I really don't understand. there must be some other reason for my not going fishing besides getting tired or getting a headache or smelling up the house.
Of course there is. She wants them to do something else with her this weekend. How much better off we'd all be at home or at work if we calmly say what we really want, rather than trying to manipulate the other person into our point of view through criticism.
But when that doesn't happen, use this. It's a valuable skill to improve honest communication in the close relationships of our lives at home or at work. We feel more in control and less anxious when we attempt to clarify the situation and find out just what the other person really means.
Shay, I simply hate your design for the new packaging.
Here comes the negative inquiry.
What is it about my design that's so bad?
Now, Michael either has to back off his strong opinion about the design or tell Shay specifically what is wrong with it, in which case they're on their way to problem solving.
Okay. I know watching a video like that, sometimes it's a little difficult to catch everything. If you just watch the video there, I think that's all I really wanted you to do. But now let me just talk briefly about what you just saw. And again, tools for your toolbox. You saw Dr. Manuel J. T. Smith there. Again, the author of the book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And this is his companion video to that book on assertiveness skills. Well, let's talk about broken record. That was the first one you saw. What is the skill of a broken record? And if you'd like to write this down, calmly repeating your goal, calmly holding to your position. When would this be helpful, and what situations might this be helpful? When you have the final say. When you have the final say, okay? Now, I mean, when I go back to my kids again, when my kids were little, we had a rule in our house they had to be in by 8 o'clock on a summer night. But that was not the rule for other parents. I mean, other kids were playing outside at 9, 10 o'clock at night. My kids would come in and get endlessly frustrated with me. Dad, why are we coming in? Everybody else is still outside. And I say, I know, but our rule is 8 o'clock. But everybody else gets to stay out late. I understand, but our rule is 8 o'clock. But why? It's still light out. I appreciate that, but our rule is 8 o'clock. Now, again, I don't have to explain myself. I get the final say here. I'm a broken record. Okay, now how does this help us in the audit profession? Well, kind of an example I gave in one of our previous webinars. Hey, Mr. Business Partner, you're not reconciling your general ledger accounts. Well, I don't care. I don't have time. And the problem people make, again, when they try to sell their recommendation, auditors make when they sell a recommendation, is they try to cite some policy. Don't you know there's a reconciling policy that requires you to reconcile? No, if I'm a broken record, I'm a broken record around risk. We just had a $7 million fraud loss. You need to reconcile. Oh, but I don't know if I have enough time. You've got too much exposure here. You need to reconcile. Okay, we're a broken record when it comes to issues that have too much risk. And again, this is in your own natural style. Okay? It's not you being some robot. Okay? It's just you holding to your position in your own natural style. You're a broken record when you have the final say. Now the coping skills, coping with criticism. The fogging skill, I'll just tell you this, I bring up time and time again in my personal life and my professional life. I use it in other classes I teach outside of our new auditor training class. What is fogging? Now remember, these next three skills are coping with criticism, but coping with different types of criticism. I'd like you to write this down. Fogging is for arbitrary criticism. Fogging is for arbitrary criticism, the type of criticism that's really not worth your time. Now, what is fogging? I want you to write this down. There's two things I'm going to have you write down. The basic definition of fogging is calmly acknowledging criticism. Calmly acknowledging criticism. But I think more important for you to write down, to remember, I should say, is make a note of this. Fogging is giving the other person, the criticizer, credit for their point of view. What? Giving the criticizer credit for their point of view. The first words out of your mouth when you receive arbitrary criticism are to give the criticizer credit for their point of view. You don't understand our business. I can see how you might think that. I can appreciate why you feel that way. We're always training the auditors. I can appreciate that. I can understand why you think that. The first words out of your mouth are to give the person who's criticizing you credit for their point of view, because it totally diffuses the situation. You're not calling them an idiot. You're saying it's a valid point of view. I can understand why you think that. I can appreciate why you feel that way. And then once that initial diffusion takes place, then you can state your point of view. We're always training the auditors. I can appreciate that. I can see how you might think that. But you know, our best auditors are the ones who ask you questions to find out what you know, not for them to tell you how much they know, or however you want to couch it. Fogging may be the most useful assertiveness skill we talk about today, because so much of the criticism we receive in our lives is arbitrary. And what do most people do when they receive arbitrary criticism? They push back. They push back. We're always training the auditors. No, you're not. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No, the first words out of your mouth for arbitrary criticism is give the criticizer credit for their point of view. Just try this sometime. When I do this in the live classroom, we get people into pairs and we do a role play. Okay, one person gets to practice be the criticizer first, and the other person practices fogging, and then we reverse the roles. Fogging, the first coping skill, the first skill for coping with criticism. What type of criticism? Arbitrary criticism. Okay, Jim, let's look at our third polling question today. What is the definition of fogging? Acknowledging criticism, sticking to your position, admitting your mistakes, or asking questions? And the poll is open.
And the majority of you have voted. We'll leave it open for another 10 seconds or so. See if we can get everybody's vote in there. And we will go ahead and we will close the poll and share the results. And the majority said acknowledging criticism in order to break the manipulative.
That is correct. Great job, everyone. I think you'll find the fogging technique very useful. Try this sometime, both in your personal life and your professional life. Give the other person credit for their point of view, the first words out of your mouth after they criticize you, and you'll see what a substantial effect it has on diffusing the situation. The second of the coping skills that you saw in the video was negative assertion. Now, what is negative assertion, and what type of criticism really is this designed to negate or to help with? It's for valid criticism. What? This is for valid criticism. Remember, fogging was for arbitrary criticism, but now negative assertion is for valid criticism. This is extremely easy to explain, but in the world we live in today, maybe not so easy to do. Negative assertion is basically admitting your mistakes. That's what it is. This report was late. Remember the video? You're right, Linda. It was not my best work. I really, really goofed. Oh, I mean, the criticizer is almost taken aback that you're admitting that you're not perfect. In the world we live in today, this is an easy one to describe. Let's admit our mistakes. But in the world we live in today, maybe the most difficult for us to actually execute. How many of us are comfortable admitting our mistakes? and yet this can help build relationships with people. It can help us to get on with our lives and do the things that we know we can do well at. We're not perfect, all right? And how much easier our lives would be today if we could admit that to other people, because that shows we're assertive, we're confident in ourselves. I got a lot to deliver here. I bring a lot to the table. Yeah, I didn't quite do real well that time, but okay. Admit your mistakes and move on with your life. Negative assertion is for valid criticism. The last of the coping skills with criticism now is for the criticism that is not specific. What type of criticism is this for? This is for non-specific criticism, and I see this all the time. Bill's not a team player. Bill has a bad attitude. Now, what do most people do when they receive that type of non-specific criticism? They tell the criticizer, oh, I'll have a better attitude. I'll be a better team player next time. And they walk out of the room thinking, what did I do? Why does he think I have a bad attitude? If you ever receive non-specific criticism, you always want to ask the question to get at the underlying behavior of the criticism. What did he say? What I'm saying is you want to ask the question to get at the underlying behavior of the criticism. You want to get this to be behavioral-based criticism, not non-specific criticism. If someone comes to me and says, Bill's not a team player, I would say, what is it about my behavior that makes you think I'm not a team player? If someone says to me, Bill has a bad attitude, I would say, what is it about my behavior that makes you think I have a bad attitude? Because it's only if I get at behaviors can I change behavior or keep doing behaviors that are beneficial. Bill, you have a bad attitude. Well, what is it about my behavior that makes you think I have a bad attitude? Well, when you threw that stapler at me, oh, okay. Now I know why you think I have a bad attitude. I better not do that. You get my point here, right? I see this in performance appraisals all the time, and on positive basis. Bill did a great job on this audit. What does Bill need to keep doing? What is it about Bill's behavior that makes you think he did a great job on this audit? This is for non-specific criticism, okay? We need to get at the underlying behaviors by active inquiry, inquiring of the criticizer as to the underlying behaviors for why they're saying what they're saying. Now, we did not see these in the video, but I'm just going to mention these briefly. These are not as critical as the first four we looked at, but it's kind of the wrap-up here to when I say no, I feel guilty. And by the way, if you do go to your local bookstore, it's still one of the best-selling books on assertiveness skills. It came out in the 1990s, again, authored by Dr. Manuel J. Pete Smith. I'm really hoping these skills help you not only to be a better auditor, but also in your personal lives as well. What is free information and self-disclosure? It's you openly admitting positive and negative aspects about yourself. It's free information, freely giving information and openly disclosing information about yourself to build the relationship with the other person. And you know, just to be totally honest here, I see so many people that struggle with this. I mean, I used to interview students for our associate program at Wells Fargo. These were students right out of college, and the associate program was for entry-level auditors. I'd be interviewing these people on college campuses, sitting across the table from a student who would have a 3.97 GPA. And I always tried to ask behavioral-based questions because past behavior is typically the best predictor of future behavior. Can they do this job? So I'd say, give me an example of a time when. Give me an example of a time when you had to solve a problem. And they couldn't. They couldn't. They could not give free information and disclose aspects about themselves on how they had to do some critical thinking or how they had to come up with a solution to a complex problem. Yet they've got this great resume and all these activities they were involved in, but they have a hard time communicating. These are the communication skills: free information, self-disclosure. Now, when do you use this? When you meet people for the first time, or when you're trying to establish relationships, Maybe you're meeting a business partner, going through findings on the course of the audit. You want to engage in some small talk. You want to build a relationship with this person. The only caveat I would have to this is be careful. Remember, their time is valuable. You don't want to engage in too much small talk before you need to get down to business here. But many people don't do this. Freely, openly, admitting both good things, bad things, or sharing information about themselves. That's the basic thing here. These are the conversation skills. The last skill in the book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, is called workable compromise. And this is as much, I don't know if it's totally a skill, but something that we typically try to work towards with a business partner. And, let me just ask you this. First of all, what is a compromise? What is a compromise? Well, I just want you to think about this for a second. I was watching a movie the other night, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this movie, an old movie with Gregory Peck, To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay? Gregory Peck, a Southern lawyer in this movie. Anyway, he has a little girl, a little daughter by the name of Scout. She's about 6, 7 years old, and she just went to her first day of school. Now, prior to her first day of school, her dad, Gregory Peck, Atticus, reads to her every night before bed, and she loves it. She loves it when her father reads to her before bed, and she cherishes that moment. But now she went to her first day of school, and the teacher said, your father is teaching you to read all wrong, and it's got to stop. And she came home from school that first day, and she's crying. She's sitting on her front steps outside the door, sitting on the steps crying. And Atticus, again, Gregory Peck, comes and sits beside her and says, Scout, what's wrong? She said, I'm not going to school anymore. Why not? The teacher said, you're teaching me to read all wrong, and you can't read to me anymore. He says, Scout, do you know what a compromise is? Breaking the law? No. And here's the definition he gave. An agreement reached by mutual consent. What? An agreement reached by mutual consent. He said, you consent to the necessity of going to school, and we'll keep on reading just as we always have. And she stopped crying. Do auditors ever compromise? Is this a word that should be in our vocabulary? Absolutely. But in certain situations. Now, I don't think I would ever compromise on an issue. My example earlier, you're not reconciling your general ledger accounts, and if they don't start reconciling, we just had a $7 million fraud loss. There's too much risk here. They need to have the control in place to mitigate the risk. So I wouldn't compromise on my recommendation that they need to reconcile their general ledger accounts. But I may compromise on how they train their people on the reconciling policy. In other words, the management response may come back to say, we're going to have a comprehensive training program for all of our staff members on the reconciliation policy. My recommendation may have been to just, have everybody read the reconciling policy. Their corrective action is better than my recommendation. Remember, the corrective action always must address the root cause of the issue. And if their corrective action plan does a better job of addressing the root cause of the issue, I'm going to compromise. I mean, great. As long as it addresses the root cause of the issue, go for it. Provide the comprehensive training on the reconciling policy. Working with our business partners to compromise in certain situations. Absolutely. And maybe you don't think of this as an assertiveness skill, but it definitely comes into play in how we do our work. Those are the assertiveness skills. Before we go to our last topic today, I totally really mean this from my heart. I really want to encourage you to use these. Try broken record. Try fogging. We get so much arbitrary criticism in our lives today. Try negative inquiry when people are not being specific as to their criticism. And try negative assertion when you messed up, you made a mistake, and you need to admit your mistake. Well, let's go to our last topic today, and I combine this with assertiveness skills because interviewing skills is closely aligned with our assertiveness skills. interacting with our business partners, gathering information from our business partners is also a skill that can be learned. And again, some people don't think of it this way. Our best auditors are the people that can ask the who, what, when, where, why, how, and gather that information effectively from a business partner. Is there a right way and a wrong way to interview a business partner? That's what I want you to think about as we go through this segment of our training. I believe every time we interact with our business partners, and some of you call them clients, every time we interact with a business partner, we put our credibility on the line. What value are we providing them? What value do we provide the organization? Interviewing is a skill that can be learned. And you can see the basic bullet points. I won't go through all those on this slide here. But again, this is a close tie to what we just talked about with the assertiveness skills segment. Well, let's look at some tips now with regard to interviewing. What happens before, if you're the auditor and you need to go talk to a business partner, what should you do before the interview takes place? And there's kind of a laundry list of things on this slide, but I'm going to just point you to a couple of them, a few of them here. I'd like you to star the first bullet. I alluded to this in one of our earlier webinars. The very first thing you should always think about if you're assigned on an audit project, and a lot of people think it's risk. I need to understand the risks in the business. And don't get me wrong, that's extremely important. But I always remember the speaker we had come into Wells Fargo one day and said, remember this. The very first thing you should think about when you're assigned an audit project is ask this question, what's the business? What is the business? Do you understand the goals and objectives of the business, the key strategies, the business processes that deliver the products and services, the technology the business uses, the regulations that impact the business? What's the business? And then what are the risks that could prevent them from achieving their goals and objectives? That first bullet, before you go to interview someone, you need to establish a solid understanding of the business. Now go down to the fifth bullet that says find out as much as possible about the person to be interviewed. Now, I'll just share something that happened to me in public accounting. When I first got out of college, I worked for Deloitte & Touche. When I worked for them, they were Touche Ross, but again, now today, they're one of the big 4 public accounting firms. And I had something happen to me that I'll never forget. I was on an audit, and I went to interview the controller of the business. I mean, I thought this was a CPA, someone very knowledgeable in accounting. And so I wanted to impress her. I went into her office, and because I was an accounting major, I started using accounting lingo, accounting language. I'd say, tell me how you accrue revenue. And she just gave me a totally blank stare. And I realized she had no idea what I was talking about. In fact, she just started waving her hands at me as I started using this accounting language, like, I don't get what you're talking about. And then she just said this, when I pay a bill, I put it in this column by the door. She's looking at a manual ledger here. She said, when I pay a bill, I put it in this column by the door. And when I sell a product, I put it in this column by the window. That's exactly what she said. Well, I walked out of the room, and the in-charge auditor said, how did the interview go? And I said, well, as long as they don't move the furniture, they're going to be fine. But she doesn't know anything about accounting. And that was one of our main recommendations on that audit project, that they needed to hire a CPA. But if I had known this is my point here, if I had known that she didn't have an accounting background, I would have totally structured my questions differently. Like, tell me what you do when you sell a product. Tell me what you do when you pay a bill. Forget the accrue revenue. She doesn't know what that is. Know something about the person before you go to interview them, and you know this. People at lower levels in an organization are much more into the details and may have much more detailed information for you. You can ask more detailed questions than people at higher levels. Find out as much as possible about the people that you're going to interview. Scheduling the interview, I'll just say this. Group your questions. You don't need to get on their calendar for everything. I had an auditor one time that walked back and forth, kept interrupting the business partner, knocking on their door, because they went into their audit program and step one said they had to do this, and then they went and knocked on their door and gathered that information. Then they went back and typed it up, and then they went to step two, and then they went back and knocked on their door. I mean, look through your entire area of testing. Write down all of your questions, and then go talk to the business partner. Obviously, we want to be as minimal amount of disruption to them as possible. Okay? Just some tips before the interview. During the interview, again, just some basic things. We talked about, being respectful of their time, but there's something I want you to star here for just a second and look at the 6th bullet down. It says allow periods of silence. Now, one of the mistakes newer auditors often make is they try to help the business partner answer their own question. In other words, I'm the auditor. I go to a business partner and I say, hey, Mr. Business Partner, how do you open your vault? Let's say I'm on a bank vault audit, and I want to make sure the vault's under dual control. And I go to the business partner and say, hey, Mr. Business Partner, how do you open your vault? And if the business partner doesn't respond right away, the mistake that many auditors make is they try to help them out. Like, you'd never just let one person open your vault, would you? And the business partner would say, oh, no, of course not, no. Allow silence. Tell me how you open your vault, and wait. And believe me, they will fill the silence. You may get much more information than you ever thought you were going to get by just using this one simple technique. Okay? One question at a time. Allow periods of silence. Don't help them out. Okay? Even though you know the vault's supposed to be under dual control, you're not going to allude to that. Building rapport. Again, don't overdo it. We talked about the conversation skills of free information and self-disclosure. Again, you want to build rapport. You want to build a relationship with the business partner. But some people have overdone this. I'll just be honest with you. Again, they get into small talk, and the business partner is just being nice to them, talking about the ball game last weekend or whatever, but really the business partner's thinking, let's get on with business here. I've got other things I need to be doing. All right? Just be respectful of people's time. We want to get in. We want to get out of there as quickly as possible. Gather the best information possible. I'm just going to say this now. I alluded to it earlier. Remember I said our best auditors are the ones who do ask the who, what, when, where, why, how questions. But I think, again, there's a misperception from the auditor's standpoint, especially newer auditors, that they feel uncomfortable. I mean, I've had new auditors come to me and say, Bill, I just got out of college, and I'm supposed to go talk to someone who's worked in this business for 20 years and tell them how to do their business? And I'm always like, that's not your job. Your job is not to tell them how much you know or don't know. Your job is to find out how much they know. Get them to talk. Get the business partner to tell you who, what, why, when, where, how. Get them to talk. It's a big misconception for newer auditors. They feel uncomfortable asking questions like maybe they shouldn't be doing that they should be talking about telling them how they do their business, showing them some elaborate flow chart of look at what I did, mapping your... Get them to talk. Interviewing is a skill. And also let me say this. You'll get verbal representations, obviously, when you interview a business partner. But you always need to substantiate whatever they tell you is true. The old auditor adage, trust what they tell you, trust but verify what they tell you. Hey, Mr. Business Partner, how do you open the vault? We open it under dual control. One person has the key, one person has the combination. And the mistake many auditors make is they go back to their desk, to their laptop, and they go into the audit program and they say, the vault is under dual control. Well, what did you do to substantiate what they told you was true? Did you watch them open the vault? Trust but verify. Okay? Interviewing is the start of gathering audit evidence, or one of the starting points of gathering audit evidence. Again, in what we talked about last week, there are other techniques. In our fieldwork webinar, we talked about other techniques for verifying what the business partner tells us is true or not true. Now, is there a right way and a wrong way to ask a question? I'm sure you've heard about this, but just so we're all on the same page here, the difference between an open-ended and a closed-ended question. Again, a big mistake new auditors often make is asking a closed-ended question. You wouldn't let just one person open the vault, would you? No. Instead of, tell me how you open the vault. You know, I know I've been talking about my kids today, but this just kind of popped in my head. When my kids were little, you know, I want to have a relationship with them, but I'm at the office all day. And then I come home from work and I want to talk to them. So I would first say, did you have a nice day in school today? And they go, yeah, and then they run off. That's a closed-ended question. Closed-ended question is any question they can answer with a yes or no response, and they don't need anything else. So instead of saying, did you have a nice day in school today, I started rephrasing my question to say, tell me what happened in school today. Or what happened in school today? And they may still not want to talk to me a lot, but at least they'd get some information. And sometimes it would be, oh, I had this test today and I didn't do well. And okay, let's talk about it. What happened? Okay, now we've got a conversation going here. One of the big mistakes auditors make is asking closed-ended questions. Tell me how you opened the vault. That's the open-ended question, not you wouldn't let just one person open the vault, would you? That's closed. And another big mistake auditors make is asking biased questions. You see in the bold print at the bottom of the slide, asking biased questions is the most common mistake auditors make when conducting interviews. Like, you would never let just one person open the vault, right? Would you? I mean, that's not only closed, it's biased. I'm leading them to the answer I want to hear, that obviously we shouldn't have just one person opening the vault door. The best questions are the open-ended, which we saw in the previous slide, and unbiased type of question. And here's examples of each type of question on this slide. So the one we want is the first bullet, the open-ended, unbiased question. Tell me, you know, how was the allowance for uncollectibles estimated? It's open-ended. They can't answer yes or no. And it's unbiased. I don't know what they're going to say. It may be what I want to hear. It may not be what I want to hear. Open, biased. Why do you believe the allowance for uncollectibles is adequate? It's open, but it's biased. I'm assuming the allowance is adequate. Closed, unbiased. Has the allowance for uncollectibles been estimated using the same methods as last year? Yes or no? And finally, closed, biased. The allowance for uncollectibles is fairly stated in all material respects, wouldn't you say? Remember, and I know this is Auditing 101, the best questions for auditors to ask always are the open-ended, unbiased questions. Tell me how you open your vault, or how do you open your vault? Okay? Not, you would never just let one person open the vault, would you? That's closed, that's biased. That's the worst type of question to make. Remember, asking closed, biased questions, one of the most common mistakes new auditors make in conducting interviews. Okay, Jim, here's our last polling question today. What is the best type of question to ask?
Okay, I've launched that poll. Please select the best answer. And I believe we had a question come in, Bill. Any recommendation on books about interviewing skills?
You know, so I'll put up my email address afterwards today. Let me do some research on that, and I will get back to you on that. There's a few off the top of my head, but before I make a recommendation, I just want to make sure I steer you in the right direction.
Okay. Let's check our poll here. Okay, everyone has voted. We'll leave it open for about another 10 seconds or so. Okay, and we will close the poll and share the results. And the majority said open or unbiased.
Way to go. You're paying attention, and again, thanks so much. I mean, that is one of the big mistakes. People don't do that. Remember, if you're training new auditors, make an emphasis of that. A common mistake is the closed bias question for new audit personnel. Well, the last thing I wanted to mention today is a little exercise I do when I teach this in the live classroom, and I would challenge you, or I would recommend you try this in one of your staff meetings, departmental meetings, or an off-site meeting. I think you'll find this very interesting, very useful, but let me describe what this exercise is all about and what it actually accomplishes. When I teach this in the live classroom, again, this is part of my new auditor training class, I get all these students into pairs, and one person is the teller of a story, the other person is the listener of a story. Now, if you're the listener, you're not allowed to talk. That's a basic rule of this exercise. There is no talking by the listener. You're not allowed to ask any questions if you don't understand something when the story is being told to you. You just have to sit and listen. You're not allowed to take notes is another rule. Okay? No talking, no note-taking if you're the listener. The teller tells a story, and I usually say keep it short, 2 to 3 minutes in length. It can be a funny story from childhood, something that happened recently, anything. All right? When the teller is done telling the story, the listener must tell the story back to the teller as accurately as possible. Okay? You've got a storyteller and a listener. Listener can't talk, can't take notes. The storyteller tells a short story, 2 to 3 minutes in length. And the listener, when the storyteller is done, must tell the story back to the teller as accurately as possible. And after that happens, we switch roles, and the other person becomes the storyteller, and then the listener just listens. Now, why do this exercise as a part of the interview skills training? And it brings up some other learning points as well. Well, after this, when we debrief this and everybody kind of calms down because it does generate a lot of energy, I say, why do we do this? What did you learn from this little activity? And immediately they'll say, oh, you have to take notes. The importance of note-taking became extremely apparent to me when I wasn't allowed to take notes. If I could have taken notes, I would have been way more accurate in telling the story back to the teller. Good point. What else did you learn from this little exercise? The importance of asking clarifying questions. I couldn't talk. If I could have asked clarifying questions, again, I would have been much more accurate in understanding. It would have helped me understand the story, and much more accurate when I had to tell it back to the teller. And then finally, the fact that you knew, if you were the listener, that you had to tell the story back to the teller, did it make you listen more attentively? And everybody's like, whoa, yes, because nobody wants to be embarrassed like they weren't listening. You know how it is when someone's talking to you and then they say, what did I just say? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, you were nodding your head politely, but you really weren't listening. And now they put you on the spot and you're supposed to repeat back what they said. How embarrassing. Because everybody that tells their stories thinks their story's great, right? And they want you to think it's great, and they want you to tell it back to them because you thought it was so interesting. I said, again, because you knew you had to tell the story back to the teller, did it make you listen more attentively? Absolutely. And then I always end it with this. You need to tell the story as an auditor. What? You need to be able to tell the story back to anybody that looks at your work. The results of your interviewing, you must document that in the work papers as accurately as possible and tell the story back to the in-charge auditor, back to the audit manager, back to the regulators, back to the external auditors, back to anybody that would look at your work. Remember what we said last week, that they would be able to re-perform the work and come to the same conclusion you did as the auditor who executed the work. We need to be good storytellers as auditors. We need to be able to accurately capture what the business partner tells us when we interview them and be able to document that in our work papers and tell the story back to anyone that looks at our work. Our work papers must stand on their own so anybody comes to the same conclusions that we did. The control is effective or the control is not effective. It's an interesting little exercise. I recommend you try it sometime. It brings up other points around listening skills. Do we listen? We have the urge to interrupt. I don't know about you, but when someone's talking to me, sometimes too often I interrupt them because I think what I have to say is more important than what they're saying. It brings up a lot of interesting points. And, you know, if you ever want to shoot me an email and I can give you all the debrief points on this, I'd be more than happy to do that. Very easy to do. You don't need to order any materials. It's just telling the story and listening to a story. It definitely brings up the importance of good interview skills, note-taking, clarifying questions, being able to tell the story back, and also brings up good listening skills, that whole concept of listening skills. And, you know, it brings up the point of asking open-ended, unbiased questions, too. I mean, people like to talk about themselves. Tell the story. If you're an effective auditor, your documentation tells the story back to anyone as accurately as possible. Well, I know we're out of time today. I wanted to leave just a minute or two for questions. I'll put up my contact information. Again, I teach seminars. I'll come into your company and do on-site training. I come to IIA chapters and deliver training. I encourage you to contact me. I'd love to talk to you more, or just shoot me an email if you have any questions about the content of our Assertiveness Skills for Auditors webinar today. And with that, I just want to thank all of you, and I'll turn it back over to Jim. Jim?
Thanks, Bill. Well, this was great. This is something that all auditors need to be aware of and need to have these skills. This is one of those skills that needs to be in your toolbox. I can't tell you how many times we used similar skills in audits that we performed, both at the schools and within the county. So it's definitely great subject. Thank you all for joining us today, and for those of you that have questions, remember that those of you that didn't pay for today and would like to get CPE, you can do so as long as you answer the polling questions and pay the fee. Again, the purpose of our Training Without Travel webinars is to provide you with high-quality, low-cost online alternative training solutions covering timely topics with value-added resources and tools that you can use in your job. We do bring you the world's best subject matter experts directly to your desktop with timely information. And the next webinar in this series, I believe, is 2 weeks from today. Correct, Bill?
That is correct.
Okay.
Interim performance appraisal.
Interim performance appraisal, something that, again, is one of those skills from a management standpoint that is very important. So those of you that are managing employees, or, you know, if you're involved in 360 evaluations, this is something that you really want to pay attention to and watch for the announcement that we will be sending out. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Bill, and I want to wish everybody a great weekend and a great day. And in closing, I'd like to say go Nationals.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.